We're doing chapter 17 today, Nectar of Devotion. Okay. As I'd mentioned in the past, that we had let me come to that section. Yes, so if you remember this section again, so we are at chapter 17. So we are now moving to Bhava Bhakti. A major chunk of this section has been Sadhana Bhakti, which was subdivided into Vaidhi Bhakti, predominantly 14 first to 12 chapters. And then Raganuga Bhakti was last two chapters, and now we're going to jump into Bhava Bhakti. And there's one chapter on Prema Bhakti, where we're going to cover this in Bhakti Shastri. So that's where we are in Bhava Bhakti. And Prabhupada has named this chapter as ecstatic love. And Prabhupada starts the chapter by saying that by process of executing regulated devotional service, one is actually elevated to the transcendental stage beyond the material modes of nature. So the executing regulated devotional service is the sadhana bhakti that we have been discussing till now. Okay? That's what Prabhupada is referring to here. And when we come to that elevated stage, which is bhava stage, which is we talked about here, it says that at that time, Prabhupada says, one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun. Right. So and then spontaneously the devotee becomes eager to serve the Lord in his ecstatic love. At this stage, the devotee is on the platform of Uttamadhikari, perfect devotion. So now Prabhupada is saying that somebody who's on Bhava is Uttamadhikari. Prabhupada is establishing that here for us. Further on, what Prabhupada says is that, or Rupa Goswami says is that, to clarify, in the previous chapters, the symptoms of devotional service were explained, along with instructions as to how we may execute devotional service with our present senses and gradually rise to the platform of ecstasy in spontaneous love. So, sadhana bhakti, sadhana Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, reaching to the platform of raga nuga bhakti, which is spontaneous love. And the two kinds of devotional service, namely devotional service through regulated principles and through spontaneous love, were discussed. So, those two we have been discussing till now. As it's a shift in the uh, thought process here, so Prabhupada is making a. Oops, what did I do? Let's close that. Give me a second. I'll share my slides again. But yes, so that's what Prabhupada is referring to here. And then he goes on to say, within the stage of the regulatory principles of devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. And I want to open my slides so that I can explain this part, what Prabhupada is talking here. Give me a minute, and I'll share my screen back again. So, as you know, Prabhupada said that person who's at this point is in a mode of, he's an Uttamadhikari. Prabhupada has already told that to us, right? So now Uttamadhikari is of two types, which Prabhupada has referred to in here. Well, actually, if you see the statement, it might sound a bit confusing because earlier we said Prabhupada is saying that those we have done sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana and Raganuga. Okay. And then he goes on to say, within the stage of regulated principle devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. And then he tells us that the effective portion of devotional service is called bhava or ecstasy. So now it might sound like as if the bhava is also comes under sadhana bhakti, but that is not the case. So I want to clarify that point so that it makes it easy for us to understand that what is actually Prabhupada meaning. So to give you an understanding is that Uttama Bhakti is pure devotional service. That's the highest category. So highest category of bhakti. And the highest category of bhakti, as we all know, is ahituki apratihata, without any ulterior motives and done only for the pleasure of Krishna. So Uttama Bhakti is a broad umbrella. Okay. And within this umbrella, there are different stages based on the maturity of realization and the devotee's emotional development. So understand. So that's Uttama Bhakti. So it's a blanket. It's a big blanket. Right? Sadhana Bhakti is a subdivision of Uttamadhikari. Right? Uttamadhikari has gone through that Sadhana Bhakti stage. So that's the practice stage. And then Bhava comes when the emotions begin to awaken. So Sadhana Bhakti is a part of Uttama Bhakti, but Uttama Bhakti also includes Bhava and Prema. So think of Uttama Bhakti as a journey and Sadhana Bhakti as a starting road on that journey. So the reference that Prabhupada is making here, that within the stages of regulative principles of devotional service, namely there are executive and effective. So here, Prabhupada does not mean that Bhava also comes under Sadhana Bhakti. No. What he means that the Uttama Bhakti also includes Bhava and Prema. That's what Prabhupada is establishing here. So sadhana is a subdivision of Uttama. So it's not like Uttama Adhikari or the Bhava stage is under sadhana bhakti. It's the other way around to understand it that way. Right? So, and as we know that in Chaitanya Charitamrita we're told, right, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava, that anything that practice that aims to awaken bhava is called sadhana bhakti. So I just want to clarify this before I jump into, so that we know that the regulatory principle here does not refer to the sadhana bhakti that has been discussed till now. Prabhupada is giving a more blanket statement, and that he's covering everything. So this is more from a perspective of an Uttamadhikari, that Uttamadhikari, his journey includes executive. So executive means what you execute. Okay. So executive, that's executive. So what you execute is the sadhana part. And what is the outcome of it? What is the effect of it? Is the bhava. So that's the effective part. And then Prabhupada further goes on to tell us that this effective portion of devotional service is called bhav. Um, so just wanted to clarify this here, because when you will read it by yourself or when you read it later, it might sound as if that Prabhupada is claiming that bhava is a part of sadhana, but that's not what Prabhupada is saying here. It's just for our clarification. I wanted to highlight this part. Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Anybody has any thoughts or comments around that? Broadly speaking, that the regulatory principles Prabhupada is referring to here is not a reference to the Vaidhi sadhana bhakti that he's talked about that has been talked about in the earlier chapters. Here he's talking about a bigger umbrella statement from an Uttama Bhakti perspective, which includes sadhana also, which is executive, but we execute, like hearing, chanting, and the effective part, which is the bhava. So from that perspective. In that stage, in the sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana, where we were reading, the executive was mostly according to rules and regulations. There was no, we were not like doing it voluntarily. We're not doing it voluntarily. So here, from Uttama Adhikari perspective, he's doing it with he's making endeavors consciously to fulfill Krishna's desires. Okay? That's why when we divide it here, it says Cheshta Rupa is endeavors, Bhava Rupa is by emotions, and that Cheshta Rupa can be divided into endeavors which cause Bhava, which is sadhana part as we have talked about, and then endeavors which are effect of Bhava. So that's the executive and effective. So the division is not of the sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. The division that Prabhupada is talking about here, this sentence that we've highlighted, is the division of Cheshta Rupa, which is a subsection of Uttama Adhikari. Uttama Bhakti. Sorry, this is not Uttama Bhakti. All clear? Okay, it's all clear. Let's move further. Okay, let's go back now. So, okay, so what is the definition of Bhava Bhakti? And that's what Prabhupada is elaborating in detail in this chapter as we discuss further, the definition of Bhava Bhakti. So definition of Bhava Bhakti is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, 23rd chapter. So which says, Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryamshu Samya Bhag Ruchi Bhis Chitta Masrinya Krit asau bhava uchyate. When devotional service is executed on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a sunray of love for Krishna. At such a time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes, and one is then situated in bhava. So now let's look at a few things here. So the primary characteristic of bhava is the first aspect which is being talked about in this slide, which is Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma. So Sattva, as we all know, is goodness. Okay. Uh, we know the three modes. We have discussed it in Bhagavad Gita. In which chapter does Krishna talk about those three modes? Bhagavad Gita? Anyone?
Chapter 13.
That was your voice was echoing. What was that chapter you said? Is it 13? Was that you said 13? Adil? Okay, I think we lost Mataji. She's disconnected. Anybody else want to give a try? What chapter did Krishna speak about of the
14.
14th. Okay, yes, 14. 14th chapter. And under whose control is Maya? Or are the three modes? And can somebody quote a very famous verse where Krishna, or where we are told under whose control are
Prabhuji,
these?
Maya dakshena pakruti suyate sa characharam hetu nanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate.
Kriti kriya manani guna karmani. No, sorry. Yeah, prakriti kriya manani guna karmani service ahankara bhubatma kartyam iti manyate. No, this is the one.
No, that's not the one. Akshara Mataji gave one verse, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa charachare hetunanne kaunteya jagat viparivartate. Maya dakshena prakriti. That's talking about prakriti, but you're close. Give me a verse where Krishna very directly says, under whom are these gunas under the control of? I'm giving you a hint. The word guna is there in that verse. Because the gunas, right? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, they are the three gunas. It's a very famous verse in the 7th chapter.
I do not remember the verse, but is it chapter 7 in which he says that the three modes of material natures are manifested by me and are under my control?
Yes, that's what it says. Yes. I was looking for the verse, if somebody remembers it. That's right, Madhu. Yeah, you're right. That's what Krishna says there. We should know some very important verses. This is a very important verse. Somebody can ask you, where does Krishna say that? That this Maya this gunas are under his control. So
it's a tribur guna. I hear something.
Devi Hesha Guna Mai, Mam Maya Durakta. Devi Hesha Guna Mai is this material nature is mind. The gunas, they are mind. Krishna says that. Devi Hesha Guna Mai, Mam Maya Durakta. Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante, Maya Itam Taranti. So they're under my control. So yes. So Devi Hesha Guna Mai. So the Guna Mai, that gunas are his. So yeah, so we know what Sattva is, Rajas, Tamas, but here what is being talked about is Shuddha Sattva. Right? Shuddha Sattva Vishesh Atma. So the word Atma, as we know in Bhagavad Gita, can refer to soul, it can also refer to nature. So we have a spiritual nature. So it is the stage, so Bhava is the stage where Shuddha Sattva enters the devotee's heart. Shuddha Sattva is not the material mode of goodness, but it's Lord's internal potency, whose function is to revive the living entity's dormant love for Krishna. Sattva is still material, even though it's goodness, but it's still material. Okay? Shuddha Sattva is pure goodness, it's transcendental. And the Shuddha Sattva has two characteristics. And we have talked about Samvit, Haladini, Sandhini potencies of Krishna in the past. So briefly, so Krishna has this Samvit and Haladini. Right? Samvit is which gives knowledge. Okay. Haladini is the pleasure potency, devotional pleasure. So Shuddha Sattva is composed of these two. So when Shuddha Sattva manifests, devotee's heart is illumined with the knowledge of Krishna. Right? For example, so let's take an example. Samvit. Samvit is knowledge. So somebody can ask this question, okay, how do I do Bhakti Shastri? Okay, so that's Samvit. So that knowledge gets come, okay, how to do Bhakti Shastri. Then Sandhini potency is that which provides the facility. For example, I need a computer, I need a laptop, I need an internet connection, and so forth. I need books. And then Haladini is what keeps you going. That's the pleasure-giving potency. So that's Haladini. So these three, they come together. Those are the three potencies of Krishna. So pleasure comes when we start liking something about it, right? If somebody is forcing you to do something which you have no interest in, slowly you'll just leave it. You won't be able to continue it for long. So Samvit is knowledge giving, Sandhini is facility giving, and Haladini is pleasure giving potency of Krishna. So just as one is spontaneously attracted to worldly things and delights in worldly things in this conditioned state, in Shuddha Sattva, the person gets spontaneously attracted to spiritual. So Shuddha Sattva is Visheshatma. It is the state where Shuddha Sattva enters the devotee's heart. Okay, and the way I was explaining that how does it descend into our heart is through these potencies. So Rupa Goswami tells us that Shuddha Sattva is composed of Samvit and Haladini potencies of the Lord. So, and that is Bhava Bhakti. So when the Samvit and Haladini potency, when they combine in the heart, one can fully begin to relish. One can begin to fully relish, not fully begin to, but begin to fully relish Krishna as the supreme object of love. So that's the first aspect of Bhava Bhakti. And the second aspect of Bhava Bhakti, as given in this slide, is Prema Suryamshu Samya Bhak. So Prema, love of God, Surya like the sun, Amshu is a ray, Samya Bhak, which is similar to. Okay, that's the second thing that is being there. So a dormant seed cannot grow without being touched by the sun's energy of heat and light. Similarly, love of Godhead, which is Prema, is like a seed. It's lying dormant in my heart, not just my heart, in every living entity's heart. It cannot grow without the touch of Lord's own devotional energy, Shuddha Sattva. So this Bhava, it's like Prema, but it's in a very preliminary budding state. Okay, and this is also indicated by the term Prema Suryamshu, a ray of the sun of Prema. So Bhava is the sun ray, Prema is the sun itself. Understand it that way. So the sun and the sun rays, they are qualitatively less similar, but there is a distinction in the quantitative intensity of them. So Bhava is the onset of Prema, as dawn is the onset of the day. So when the first rays of dawn show up, one can be sure that the full light of sun will soon rise. Similarly, when one achieves Bhava, the full light of Prema will manifest very quickly. Right? So when we have done the sadhana bhakti with being sincere, strict and sincere, then the Shuddha Sattva potency may enter my heart through the mercy of a pure devotee. And when that Shuddha Sattva touches my heart, it energizes the seed of Prema, which is already there, and causing it to sprout. So Rupa Goswami also calls Bhava as Prema Ankura. So Ankur means sprout, Prema means love. So it's the first sprouting of Prema. So that's the way, so if you have a Bhava, which is like a flower that has started to bloom, versus Prema, which is a flower that has completely bloomed. Okay. And the third thing, which is Ruchi Bhis Chitta Mashrinya. So Mashrinya means softness. Ruchi Bhi means by different tastes. Okay, Chitta of the heart. Okay, so let's look at what that is. Okay, so Ruchi Bhis. It said that it's different desires. Ruchi Bhis is different desires. So, as I said, so taste and heart become soft. So soft means, what does the word soft would mean is that if there is a devotional stimuli, the devotee becomes flooded with emotion. For example, I've given the example of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. When Gadadhar Pandit went to meet him, he was presenting himself as a very opulent person, very much indulged in material pleasures. But the moment he hears Krishna's name, he becomes maddened with love. And he starts tearing off his clothes and just throwing off everything around him, just breaking it. So that's the devotional stimuli. Mahaprabhu, when he would see a river, he would think it is Yamuna and he would jump into it. Obviously, Mahaprabhu is not in bhava. He's on the topmost, purest stage. He's Krishna himself. So I'm just giving you for example. That's a softness of heart, right? So yeah. So and Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam there is a verse which says that if our heart does not change by chanting the holy name, then our heart is, they say it, the phrase that's used in that verse is steel framed. Yeah. So yeah. So softening of the heart has to happen. So the emotions have to come up. If the emotions are not coming, then probably there's something wrong going on there. We're not doing our bhakti, the sadhana bhakti properly. Right. So that's the primary characteristic, as we saw, was Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma, and then the Prema Suryamshu. Right? And then the secondary characteristics are that softening in the heart and giving rise to various tastes. So now the Ruchi Bhis, right? So Ruchi Bhis, different tastes. Now, Ruchi is, or how to say it? When the word Ruchi is a taste, and so giving rise to various tastes. So when we use the word taste, actually the word Abhilasha gives us a much, that's what Rupa Goswami tells us, that Abhilasha gives us a much better understanding of the feeling. It's much deeper than a desire, right? So there are different desires that come into our heart, cherished desires. Abhilasha comes into our hearts. So there are taste or devotional desires that blossom within one's heart at the stage of bhava. And the three I have put here is that Rupa Goswami have told us: desire to achieve Krishna, desire to please Krishna, and desire to be close at heart with Krishna. So that's the taste that is being referred to here. Okay, so we have done Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma, then we have Prema Suryamshu, and then we are talking about Ruchi Bhis, Chitta, Mashrinya. So those the three things have been done. And then that's what eventually leads to Bhava. And when that Bhava appears, it permeates my consciousness to such an extent that it becomes one with the mind. And the example that Prabhupada is giving in the, is that? Prabhupada is saying, they stay within the mind, it becomes samadhi. Okay, yes. So they, initially, we might have some ecstatic symptoms now and then, but they don't stick with us. However, at the stage of bhava, they stay within the mind 24/7. And that's when it's called samadhi. It becomes samadhi because 24/7 we are in that ecstasy. And that's the stage of bhava. It's very much like Prabhupada used to give the example that when you put an iron rod in fire, after some time, the iron rod becomes equivalent to fire. It can do the job of fire. Okay, so that's what happens. So similarly, the mind, this ecstasy becomes one with the mind. That's what Prabhupada is telling us here. Okay, so that's the nature of bhava, right? And then this becomes, the cause of future exchanges. of loving affairs with the Lord, future exchanges of loving affairs with Krishna. Okay, so now, how do you achieve this bhava? That's the other thing. So there are two ways to achieve bhava, and Prabhupada is telling us that. He's saying one way is by constant association with pure devotees, the other way by special mercy of Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of Krishna. Okay, so by practice. Oh no, what's this? Yeah, oh yes, bhava is. Let me see where is. Is that one? Okay. Yes, coming back. Yes. So achieving bhava. So by spiritual practice or by the mercy of Krishna devotee. Right. So the way Prabhupada has written this here, so I'll go to read further. Elevation to ecstatic stage of life is generally attained through association with pure devotees, while elevation at that stage by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotees is very rare. The purport is that one should execute devotional service rigidly in the association of devotees so that there will be certainty in raising oneself to that ecstatic position. So Prabhupada is highlighting executing devotional service rigidly. That is why in this here I put it as practice, not me. This is the way the acharyas have explained it. It's not me. And so yes, by practice. And the other is by mercy, as we have seen. There are two parts, right? So mercy and practice. That's what the two ways Prabhupada is telling us. And then the mercy is harder. It's very rare to come. That's what Prabhupada is also telling us. Right? So how, and then later, and then from here on, examples are given of people who have who have come to the stage of bhava through executing devotional service rigidly or by the mercy of Krishna. And we will see those examples as we move forward. The first example is Narada. That's the first example Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada gives. Is Narada. So Narada Muni's life story is an example of someone who achieves bhava by the way of Vaidhi Bhakti. So he served saintly people, right? That was Vaidhi Bhakti, because it was not motivated and it didn't have attraction to Krishna at that time. It was more of an obligation to the injunctions of Shastra. That's why he was doing it. But when serving those great souls, he got the opportunity to regularly hear Kirtana Katha. And this regulated hearing, he achieved the level of bhava. Right? So Vaidhi Bhakti also leads to a type of bhava, and Narad Muni is an example of it, right? And it confirms that the bhava is a precursor to prema. Right? So Prabhupada is telling us here. Yes, Machi, please.
Prabhupada, initially, did you not mention when you were explaining Uttamadhikari and then you mentioned bhava does not come under the sadhana bhakti, the regulative principles?
Yes.
How come now it is you are mentioning that? Would you please, Prabhu, elaborate here now?
So here, what I'm saying is that this is, yes, but as I told you, right, earlier, that was Uttama Bhakti that I was referring to. Under Uttama Bhakti comes Sadhana Bhakti. Let me go back to where I had in my slides. Give me 1 second. So under Uttama Bhakti comes Cheshta Rupa, which are the endeavors that we do, and there's Bhava Rupa. And there are endeavors which cause Bhava. And then so this is the executive part and the effective part. So when we execute something in sadhana, and then the bhava comes. So it's not, so what I'm referring to right now is the sadhana part, but then that sadhana is not coming under, so he's still not an Uttam Adhikari. Narada, he's not a Muni yet, he's Narada the boy, let's say. He's not an Uttam Adhikari yet. He's still doing the Vaidhi Bhakti at that point. However, after doing that Vaidhi Bhakti, later on, he was doing Bhava Bhakti if there's a point where when Narad Muni is telling his story, that he had a darshan of Krishna for a minute. And then he was completely maddened by it, and he was trying to again do it. So that was bhava bhakti. That was bhava bhakti. However, he has walked the whole process, right? So Uttam Adhikari also at one point had done sadhana bhakti. So what I'm telling is that under the umbrella of Uttam Adhikari, sadhana bhakti can come. But it's not like the initial section that we were discussing, which were Vedi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, or an extension of that is also Bhava Bhakti. No, I'm not sure. That's why I was explaining it earlier, because I know it's a bit confusing. So I consider that under the Uttam Bhakti platform, under the Uttam Bhakti, sadhana will also be there, because that Uttam Adhikari has also gone through the sadhana perspective. He has also gone through. He's also gone through the Raganuga, Rupanuga, Raganuga, and then he's done Asaktis and all that, and then he's come to Bhava. So he has done sadhana also, right? But then after that, when he reaches that Bhava Rupa, those sadhana parts, they are no more, they are a separate heading. So the Bhava is a separate heading. I think I'm not clear here myself. I'm just trying to tell you. And I think I'm not making it clear for you. That's the feeling I'm getting. Let me see how to
I
explain it
got a
further.
little confused because
Mhm.
I remember very clearly when you mentioned about the Uttam Bhakti, right?
Mhm.
Uttama Bhakti, you made this statement, right? Bhava does not come under the Sadhana Bhakti. And when I'm talking about
Yes.
Sadhana Bhakti, we are talking about the Vadi Bhakti, the regulative principle that we follow when we are executing the Bhakti. So
Yeah.
that is why I miss. And I do
Yeah.
understand you mentioned about Uttam Bhakti also includes Bhava and Prema. That piece I'm understanding, but how now here you are talking about the example of Narada, right? How he executed
Yes.
the executive principles and then he
Okay.
moved to a letter of Bhava. So that is
Okay.
where I got confused.
So I think so you understood the earlier part. Okay, that's better now. To clear for me. So yes. So what I was saying earlier, Narad Muni also, like any other Uttam Adhikari, has gone through the same path. He's done sadhana bhakti, which is subdivided into Vaidehi and Raganuga, and then he's come to Bhava. So what Prabhupada is telling us here, he's giving us his whole journey. But that doesn't mean that the journey that is being referred to here is also includes the sadhana that is Prabhupada is referring to here is a part of Bhava Bhakti, or or that all is clubbed together.
Got it.
So so I think I got your point. Earlier I was confused myself that what your question was. But so Prabhupada is saying example of rising to the stage of ecstatic love.
Mhm.
So it's a rising, right? So we all are rising. So let's say tomorrow you come to the stage of bhava, you have walked through the sadhana stage,
Sadhana. Yeah.
but then that bhava stage is not a part of that sadhana which you did, let's say whatever time it took you, whatever years it took you to reach to
Got
bhava. It's a journey for sure, but that journey is not if you want to connect the journey under the heading, under the umbrella of Uttam Bhakti, you can connect it. But if you look at them, they are not connected by themselves. Bhava is separate, and the sadhana bhakti, which includes Vaidhi and Raganuga, they are separate.
Got it.
That's the way to look at it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I now understood. From
Oh,
sadhana
thank you.
bhakti, we progress to the bhava. So
Yeah.
of course we cannot come say that bhava is the
Yes.
part of sadhana bhakti. Now I understand.
Yeah. Because as we were talking earlier, right, that sadhana bhakti includes two aspects. Vaidehi, which is where we are doing activities
Yeah.
out of like as a
Rules and regulations.
obligation to my guru, or injunctions in Shastra say it. I'm doing it, but my heart probably is not in it. My mind is somewhere else. After some time, I will come to a point where I will have some attachment in doing those activities. Okay, but still, my love has not yet the seed of love has not blossomed in my heart. It has not yet blossomed. The bhava has not come in there.
Yes, yeah.
That is completely a different stage, and the reason, and that's why Prabhupada is highlighting this, that elevation to this stage is only possible in two ways: by association with pure devotees and mercy of Krishna. So bhava is not something that, obviously none of this is something that I can do myself, but in sadhana bhakti there is some aspect where my efforts are also involved. Right, I do some things every day physically. Okay, I do 16 rounds. I read Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita every day. Yes, there is there. but still, it's not as if that it's not. There's still some of my effort, but when it comes to bhava, the mind and this ecstasy of love are joined completely. 24/7, I'm thinking about Krishna's love. Less like if as they say, right, a teenage boy falling in love with a teenage girl, and vice versa, how their mind 24/7 are thinking about that. So that's the stage where is that ecstatic love we have reached, and that requires mercy, and that requires the devotees mercy, and there is the external factor is much more strongly influencing the bhava stage. That's why it's different than the Vedic part.
Got it, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for elaborating.
No, thank you for bringing this out. It cleared my the way I was thinking also. Thank you. Yes. So this is an example of how Narad Muni reached that stage. So Prabhupada is giving the example of Narad Muni in the last stage and how he developed to the stage of ecstatic. So he was engaged in service. So he was doing the regular sadhana bhakti, okay, whatever he was supposed to do. It was not as if he knew that these self-realized souls will, that he was out of love, he was doing it. No, there was no love there. Just because his mother told him, he was doing it, right? But then those sadhus had mercy on him. They said, this boy has potential, we will stay back more. They were there for Chaturmasya season, 4 months, but they actually stayed longer. So that mercy aspect was so much strong in that it led to his elevation and eventually attracted Krishna's mercy. In Krishna in his own way, his mother was taken away from him, as Krishna says, right, that in 10.88.8, right, anugraha yashami harishe tadhanam sane, that when I'm really in love with somebody or I really want to give my blessing, I take away everything from them. So that's what he did to Narada Muni. So the mercy or the association of devotees and then the mercy of Krishna eventually brought Narad to the level of bhava bhakti, where he saw Krishna. But then Krishna left. He said, no, your bhava is still immature. He called him kuyogi in that verse. He said, you have to first convert this bhava to prema, and then you will come back to me. So that's the journey that's being referred to here. Right? So I'm giving this clarification here. However, please understand, Vaidhi Bhakti is not something very simple or just, you get, oh, Vaidhi Bhakti is nothing, Bhava is what we should aspire for. Yes, we should aspire for it. But Vaidhi Bhakti in itself has immense potential. Prabhupada has given us the whole package. If we do it, strict, serious, and sincere, Bhava Bhakti is surely going to manifest in our heart. There is no doubt about it. Just like, as the example was given, that if there is a sun ray you are seeing, the sun is going to come out anytime soon. So yes, so that's the example of by coming through that practice route, and that he did it. And then the other thing is by Raganuga. That's the other thing, right? So where's that gone? Right. So the other one is Raganuga. So by Raganuga also you can reach that bhava stage, right? It can also come that way, right? And for Raganuga, Prabhupada is not Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami is quoting an example of a lady. Where's that? He talks about Raganuga. He keeps talking about Narad Muni. And then Prabhupada quotes this, or Rupa Goswami quotes this verse, a very important verse, which comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, where we are told that what's the value of association of devotees. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido vadanti ritkarna rasayana katha. Let me open it. Tajjoshnad ashvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. That's the verse that Prabhupada is here, 325-25. And I want to show you that verse. Let me show you so that you can know where it is. Read 25-25. In association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. then real devotion and devotional service begin. Okay? And the three words that are used here is Shraddha, Ratir, Bhakti, Anukramishati. Shraddha and Ratir, right? So as we all know, in that 9 stages, Shraddha comes. Shraddha is also there, right? And then Ratir means attraction. So that's also there, right? So it's telling us that that progression happens in the association of devotees. So that's the other thing that we are being told, and Prabhupada is giving, and Rupa Goswami is giving the example of this verse of 325-25. And then another example of Raganuga, that how from Raganuga you can come to that Bhava stage, is there's an example of this. There's a story in the Padma Puran that is being talked about here. This is the story of there was a, what was that name? Chandrakanti. There was this dancer. There was this lady. When she saw the deity of Krishna, it aroused her desire to dance with Krishna throughout the night. So her dancing was an example of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, because she desired to, develop the sentiment of Ragatmikas, like the gopis. So evidenced by the fact that she remains dancing all night without wasting a moment on rest. So that's a with not wasting time is a quality of somebody who's in a bhava stage. It's called avyartha kalatvam. We will see this in the next chapter, right? So after doing this, Prabhupada also gives us some examples of where people have been able to get mercy by mercy of Krishna. Okay, even though Prabhupada told us that it's rare, but because Rupa Goswami is giving us examples, Prabhupada is giving us the summary of them. And that happens by 3 ways. Mercy, it can happen by words, vachika, darshandan, by glance, or harda, by good wishes. There are 3 ways by which mercy can bring somebody to the bhava stage. So let's see the examples. So as I mentioned, speaking, that is vachika, glancing, darshandan, and then the third one was wishes, good wishes, harda, heartfelt wishes. And then let's look at these examples. Okay, so, but then Prabhupada also tells us, I want to show that before I get into here. There's no statement. There's a statement that Prabhupada makes, a very good statement regarding these 3 stages. Give me a minute. Okay, I can't find that. Probably it will show up when I read it further. Or probably it might be up in the earlier part when Prabhupada is talking. That's where I have seen it, I think. I just wanted to bring that out. Yes, this is where it is from. We should, in special cases, of course, special favor from Krishna. And although we should always expect that, we should not sit idly and simply wait for Krishna's special mercy. The regular duties must be performed. It is just as when sometimes it is found that a person who never attended school or college may be recognized as a great scholar, or an honorary degree from great university may be offered to him. But that does not mean one should avoid school and expect to automatically receive an honorary degree. So Prabhupada is telling us, yes, Krishna's mercy can happen. Krishna's mercy is causeless. But that doesn't mean I should just wait and say, oh yeah, Krishna's mercy is causeless, I'll get it someday. No, we should expect that mercy, but we should keep putting in our efforts. So let's look at the 3 examples. The first one is of Narada Muni. It's given in Naradiya Purana, where Lord Krishna said to Narada that I wish you that you may develop unalloyed devotional service to me. Right. So that's a verbal blessing. Okay. So yes, Krishna is blessing Narad Muni to achieve Bhava Bhakti. Right? Then the other one is by here, There is an example from Skanda Puran. There are inhabitants of this Jangala province. I don't know where that province is. But when they saw Krishna, they were so stricken with the feeling that they could not withdraw their glance. So it's uh, and it's not just that they were looking at him, Krishna was also looking at them. So it's Krishna's mercy also coming from him. They were not qualified to see the Lord, but he gave them his darshan. Right? And the third one is Harda, heartfelt blessings. So Krishna or his devotees may bestow heartfelt blessings. Right? For example, in the Sukadeva Goswami was still in the womb of his mother, and he had achieved bhava stage, but he had not come out of the womb to see or hear the Lord. Right? So, but then, by Lord's heartfelt blessings, he was able to achieve that. Here, right? This is in Shukha Samhita, right? Where Narad tells Srila Vyasadeva, you have a son who is the greatest devotee of the personality of Godhead. And I can observe that without any following of regulatory principles or devotional service, he is already enriched with many of the symptoms achieved by the execution of devotional service after many, many births. So yes, so that's what is heartfelt wishes. Okay. And then Prabhupada or Rupa Goswami, they end the chapter by two examples of achieving bhava by the heartfelt good wishes of a devotee. The first example is Prahlad Maharaj. This is a statement by Yudhishthira Maharaj that how Prahlad Maharaj, he received the good wishes of Narada while within the womb of his mother, right? And then the second example is of, who was that? This is written here. Oh, other one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, second. Sorry, I missed that. Parvata Muni tells Narad, my dear Narad, of all saintly persons, you are so great and glorious that simply by your good wishes, a low-born hunter, Mrigarari, also has become a great elevated devotee of Lord Krishna. So this is the examples, two examples that are being finished. Here the chapter is being finished by those two examples. So good wishes can come from words also. I was showing you that there is words also and there are good wishes. So the difference in these two is that good wishes can be in words also and they can be indirectly also. That is why it has a separate category. Because in case of Prahlad Maharaj, for example, it was not direct. He was still in the womb of his mother. So that's why good wishes are a separate category. Okay. So now let's see what else is there. Chapter 18. Let's jump to that. Before I just get into chapter 18, any thoughts, any comments, questions, anyone? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, do you have example for the first two options also? Like
You mean by words and by, you mean here by the words and by glance?
yes.
Prabhupada gave it there. Let me jump back to that. Rupa Goswami. So by words, by speaking. So Lord Krishna, in Narada Puran it is stated, Lord Krishna is saying to Narada Muni, O best of the Brahmanas, I wish that you may develop unalloyed devotional service to me. So that's an example by words, by actually speaking. The other one by glance. This is a coming example from Skanda Puran, where saying that inhabitants of Jangal province saw the personality of Godhead. So they didn't have any qualification to see him, but just by glancing at him, they immediately came to the ecstatic, the bhava platform. So these are two examples of that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Nothing else. We'll move on to chapter 18. Character of one in ecstatic love. one of the qualities we talked about the bhava, right? So it's Shuddha Sattva Visheshatma, Prema Suryanshu Samya Bhat, Ruchi Bhir Chitta Mashrinya. So softness of the heart was one of the qualities, right? That was, but then somebody can question that. Okay, softness of heart is demonstrated by tears in my eyes, let's say. I'm crying in front of the deities. That can be an indication of softness of heart. But then there are people who can demonstrate it without even reaching the bhava stage. Right? And we might think that the person is in ecstasy. So if we equalize tears in my eyes with inner ecstatic love of God, I can make a very dangerous assumption. Imitators can bring tears artificially, as we know. So there may be, but then on the other end of the spectrum, there might be devotees who aren't at a bhava stage, but they don't demonstrate it. Okay? They don't parade their ecstatic love. So how would you know? How to know who has achieved bhava stage and who's in the position of chitta, chitta mashrinya, the softness of heart, right? So that is why Rupa Goswami, obviously expecting this question to come in, tells us there are qualities which nobody can deny. So if somebody is on a bhava stage and he has these qualities, nobody can imitate these qualities. Okay? And the verse that is referred to here is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, 23rd chapter, 18 and 19 verse. Shantir avyartha kalatvam viraktir man shunyata ashbandha samutkantha nama gane sadaruchi asakti tatha gunakhyane priti tad vashati sthale iti adeyo anubhavasyur jata bhavankure jane. When the seed of ecstatic emotion for Krishna fructifies, the following 9 symptoms manifest in one's behavior. So these are the 9 symptoms. And then we're going to read these 9 symptoms in the chapter here. Okay. So starting with, he's always anxious to utilize his time in the devotional service of the Lord. Avyartha kalatvam. A devotee who has reached the bhava stage, he's never wastes his time, or his or her time. And the second is that he is always reserved and perseverant. So, and then he's detached from all material attractions. So detached is Shanti. So you'll notice that in this actual verse, the first one is forgiveness, second one is time should not be wasted, and third is detachment. However, in this list, the Avyartha Kalatvam part is the first one, right? There is, and then so it's not. Don't think that Rupa Goswami is making a mistake. Oh, he forgot the order. No, it's not that way. It's just to understand that there's a different mood in both those cases. Actually, that's what I'm hinting at, and it's a different mood that is being referred to in both the situations. That's why Rupa Goswami is not necessarily taking an extra effort to make this correction. Oh no, that's the way Mahaprabhu has done it. I should do it exactly the same way. He's not doing it that. He's just making it. He's keeping that difference just for the sake, because he's making it more. His purpose is to be more descriptive in nature. He's giving details, so that's why it's slightly different. It's not necessarily that the same order will be followed in here. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that part so that when you read it, you don't get confused that why is he changing the order of it. Okay, So let's look at and then Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami, they'll talk about each one of them individually. There are 9 of them. Some of these you already have been through. For example, there is one where it is saying that living in a place, Mathura, and the person he's attached to chanting, some of these we already know, so we won't go necessarily in detail of all of them. One thing that you will notice here is that is detached from all material attractions. So this the word that for this is virakti. It's virakti. Okay. So detachment, as we all know, detachment also comes by the name vairagya. But then we don't get confused by that. Okay? So vairagya is the detachment from material possessions, desires. There is some amount of renunciation there. It's more about actively giving up to pursue spiritual life. Whereas virakti is that the heart does not even crave for it. So vairagya means that there is some craving, but you have controlled yourself. That is a detachment. Virakti, on the other end, is a detachment where you have no longer craving for anything because you have found something sweeter. Param drishtva nivartate. Second chapter of Bhagavad Gita tells us that. So there's a slight difference. That's why so don't confuse vairagya and virakti. When this particular detachment is being talked about here, because this is completely in English, but when you see the verse, it's virakti, not vairagya. And so that's why it's important to understand that. So okay, so utilization of time. Right? A devotee who is in the bhava stage, he utilizes his time properly, does not waste it. Prabhupada is a living example for us. Perseverance, right? What is the meaning of the word perseverance? Prabhupada is giving us a definition here. Is undisturbed even in the presence of various causes of disturbance. He's called reserved and perseverant. Right? And the example is being given is of Parikshit Maharaj. That there were various causes of disturbance for him. For example, he knew that 7 days later, a bird will come, a flying snake will come, and he will be burned to death. But that's not disturbing him. So that's a quality. Okay. And then detachment, as I said, we talked about it. Virakti. Bharat Maharaj is given as an example of Virakti. Right? And Virakti, that he was so detached that he could leave everything. His family members, his possessions at a very young age. He left everything. So Bharat Maharaj was at a bhava stage, but he fell down from that bhava stage. And then next life, again, he became a deer. Then he became Jada Bharat, and then he came to the level of prema. Pridelessness. Right? There's an example of King Bhagirath coming from Padma Puran, that he was so prideless that he gave up everything. He developed love for Krishna, and he would go begging at other people's house, even people who are his own enemies. And then Prabhupada gives an example of one of the people he knew when he was in Calcutta, Lal Babu. A great hope, right? A great hope. Ashbandha. This is a very important quality of a devotee. Ashbandha. It's easy to lose motivation in this process, as we all know, right? When we don't see success as clearly as we expected. Earlier, when we come to bhakti, devotees tell us, oh, you just chant, eat prasad, and you'll attain Krishna, you'll become happy. But later on, we realize there are many more things to do, like that devotees are transcendentally, they trick us. So being Ashabandha means that it is too important to understand that at the end of the day, Krishna's grace will surely come to us. But then when it comes is not something that we can decide. Okay, that's not something within our scope. Yeah, we can say it will come, but not sure when it will come. So that's the meaning of Ashabandha. Okay. However, a person who's Ashabandha, he knows that that the mercy will come when we need it, when we are ready to use it properly, and so we'll just wait for it. However, when we are following an acharya, a process shown by an acharya, we are already successful. In the first canto, second chapter, there is a verse. Let me see if I can pull that verse up. I think it's the 25th verse, first canto, second chapter, verse number 25. Bhejire munyo thagre bhagwantam ajokshajam. Bhejire munyo thagre bhagwantam ajokshajam. I forgot the remaining part. But let's see. Bhejire munyo thagre bhagwantam ajokshajam sattvam vishuddham shemaya kalpante anutanhya. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world. So just because we are following an acharya, our liberation is surely there. So that should give us a lot of asha, right? So we should have enthusiasm, which will fuel our desire to progress. And at the same time, we should also have patience to honor the natural pace of my growth, understanding that my spiritual evolution is gradual. So, yeah. So I'm motivated and joyful about my path, but I'm also grounded. So that's that's an aspect of great hope. Okay. And then there's another, I thought of one more verse. Let me see if I can pull that. 3, where Prabhupada in the purport, he says a very good, something good I like about, I think it's 17th. Yes. The devotees of the Lord, who are all confidential servitors, are sometimes perplexed in the discharge of their respective duties, but they are never discouraged. They have full faith in the Lord, and He paves the way for the smooth progress of the devotee's duty. As devotees, we can get perplexed, we'll get confused, but we will never be discouraged. We will never lose, we'll always win. So the victory is assured. So that's the great hope. Okay. Eagerness for achieving this desired success. Eagerness is the pride for achieving success in Krishna consciousness. We talked about eagerness earlier also. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. Kriyatam Yadi Kuto Api Labhyate. Tatra Lolyam Api Mulyam Eklam. Janma Koti Sukriti Na Labhyate. Lolyam, the eagerness, is what gives us Krishna Bhakti. So that eagerness has to be there. Attachment to chanting the holy name of the Lord. Eagerness to describe. We should be eager to share it with others. And then attraction for living in a place where Krishna has it in his pastimes. And Prabhupada has repeatedly told us, yes, physically living is good, but that can also be dangerous. If we do aparad in the dham, that aparad also gets amplified. So you can live in mind also, or if you're going, go only for a period of time where you have actual service to do. If you don't have service, you should not go to dham. So that's the way Prabhupada explains. Okay, so that's the part. Okay, so now there's a limited part of the chapter. What Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami is going to talk about, that aspect which I briefly touched upon in the earlier part, was how to distinguish, right? Like ecstatic symptoms can also show up in neophytes or non-devotees, right? So sometimes non-devotees may seem to exhibit signs of ecstasy, which is just an external display. A genuine ecstatic symptoms, they're very private for any advanced devotee. They don't show it in common. That's generally the thought process. Right? So somebody who has very sincerely done sadhana bhakti may not attain bhava also. So what to speak of a non-devotee, right? It's a very confidential thing. So when non-devotees or neophytes display emotions that resemble the symptoms of bhava, it is supposedly as a reflection of bhava. So it's rati abhas. So rati means attachment, right? So abhas means reflection. So there are two types of that reflection. One is pratibimba, which is called reflective in nature, and the other is a chaya, which is shadow. So let's talk about these two, uh, pratibimb and chaya rati abhyas. So what is this? Pratibimb is reflective attachment, reflective, right? So sometimes somebody may execute devotional service with an ulterior motive, right? So the motive is corrupt, but that practice might be very intense, right? And at the same time, if that person comes in association of very advanced devotees, some symptoms of ecstasy might show up, right? So what is happening there is that is reflective uh, symptom, reflective from an advanced devotee. So the word reflective is used because it's reflecting upon the mirror of this other person's heart who is doing the practice intensely, but he has ulterior motives. But in the presence of advanced devotees, the the there's some reflection that shows up in uh, this other person's heart also, who's a neophyte or who's a non-devotee, right? Sometimes you all might have noticed that you sit down and chant with somebody, and suddenly your chanting becomes better. And then you realize that, oh yes, I was sitting with this person. That is why my chanting was better, right? So yeah. So that's the pratibimb, which is reflective attachment. The second could be chaya. Chaya means shadow attachment. So sometimes a person may execute devotional service out of social convention or just out of curiosity, right? Here, the devotional service might not be very intense, but then the motive is not very corrupt. In the earlier one, I said the pratibimb one, reflective, they generally their motive is corrupt, but their sadhana is intense. Here it's opposite. The sadhana might not be very intense, but the motive is not very corrupt. So these people might show some ecstatic symptoms, especially when they join let's say a devotee is doing kirtan or when they visit a holy dham. So there might be some expression of this. Uh, right. So yeah. So that can happen in these two situations. Right? In pratibimb and chaya. So reflective and shadow attachment. Right. And then one thing that Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami highlight here. So I talked about this shadow attachment and this right here, which is right here. One thing Prabhupada very clearly highlights that as attachment can be invoked by the association of pure devotees, so attachment can also be extinguished by offenses committing at the lotus feet of pure devotees. So it can also harm us, right? Because if I'm a neophyte and I don't know the proper etiquettes, so I might do an offense at a pure devotee, and that might actually kill that attachment that I have developed in my heart. So we have to be very cautious of that also. So I'm just seeing Prabhupada is talking about something else also. Okay, let me just stop. So this rati abhas that we talked about, this attachment, which is not the actual, can also transform into genuine bhava. Right? So because right now it's just a semblance of ecstasy. However, if this person serves these pure devotees, his imitative attachment can transform to genuine attachment. Right? And Prabhupada, I was looking for the statement Prabhupada makes. Okay, I'm here. Here, okay, Prabhupada is saying here what he's done. If an ordinary person develops such attachment and fortunately performs devotional activity in the association of pure devotees, he can also rise to the platform of pure devotional service. So this is how powerful the association of pure devotees is. Right? And so that's what Prabhupada said, that you can progress to there also. Right? And then Prabhupada has told us that don't have an offensive mentality. That can be a big deterrent for our progress. And he talked about monism in here. Prabhupada talks about monism. That sometimes it is found that a deified devotee is taking part in chanting and dancing very enthusiastically, but within himself he is under the impression that he has become one with the Supreme Whole. So this is monism, impersonalism, right? So Prabhupada says that person's devotional ecstasy will be gone. It will, because he's starting from a very offensive mentality, right? So his devotional service will be lost. Offensive mentality. And then there is one thing where Prabhupada brings out. Was I can't find things today for some reason. Okay, let me. One thing that Prabhupada has talked about in this also, and Rupa Goswami, is that causeless bhava. So there might be somebody who has not undergone serious devotional practice, but that person might start suddenly manifest symptoms of ecstasy. Right? His ecstasy may be genuine, right? So that's something we have to also keep in mind. In a broader sense, don't offend anybody. Prabhupada has told us that when the case of Suruchi offending Dhruv Maharaj, even though she didn't know that Dhruv Maharaj was a pure devotee, and she had to suffer because of that. So don't offend anybody. That's the safest platform to be on. Right? And even if you see somebody, doing faults, and actually there could be a position where somebody might have attained bhava and still that person might be doing some faults. Okay, so Rupa Goswami tells us we should disregard such faults. He tells this towards the end, that here, if a person has completely engaged his mind, body, and activities in service of Godhead, but externally he is found to be engaged in some abominable activity, these abominable activities surely be quickly vanquished. Right? So yes. So that's our attitude towards faults in devotees. That's the way we should look at the faults in devotees. And the example is given of a full moon, that even though there are marks on the moon, but still it's illuminated. Right? So one should disregard such faults, understanding that a devotee will soon become completely perfect by the glorious force of his devotion. Okay. I'll take a pause here, see if anybody has any thoughts or comments or questions. This chapter is done. And these are...
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.